Christian, which is an homage to some of the kitty cats around the Ernest Hemingway home, I assume. And then one of my own, and then we will turn the program back over to Carol, who will provide us with a reading as well. To Crazy Christian. There was a cat named Crazy Christian who never lived long enough to screw. He was gay-hearted, young and handsome, and all the secrets of life he knew. He would always arrive on time for breakfast, scamper on your feet, and chase the ball. He was faster than any polo pony. He never worried a minute at all. His tail was a plume that scampered with him. He was black as night and fast as light. So the bad cats killed him in the fall. Crazy Christian. This poem is an original poem of mine, inspired by Ernest Hemingway, most particularly by my own meditation on his choice to end his life. I just can't imagine how a person who had accomplished so much couldn't find anything else to do. And I did read that he was in a lot of pain at the end of his life, and I assume that may have influenced his choice. But nonetheless, this poem is called With Thoughts of Ernest. With Thoughts of Ernest by Jah Love. That's me. Maybe you know a man who takes a pen in his hand and with all his heart makes his stand. Not for what he fears or even for what he dares to dream, but for what is in his heart that he knows to believe. And so I say to Mr. Hemingway on this July celebration day, I want to reason with your thoughts and say, you're not alone. There's no debtor's prison. We're all broken, and from deeper depths we've risen. There is nothing to fear but fear itself, and this, dear sir, is an ode to mental health. Mm-hmm. Thank you all. Thank you, Ernest Hemingway. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Key West Poetry Guild, and please welcome Carol Shaughnessy.
Well, thank you so much to all the poets for sharing your words and Ernest's with us tonight. As many of you know, Lorian Hemingway, Ernest's granddaughter, is very passionate about Key West and about Hemingway Days. She's the author of 3 critically acclaimed books, and she has held the renowned Lorian Hemingway Short Story Competition in conjunction with the festival for decades, in fact, since 1981. And since then, her competition has recognized and supported the efforts of writers who have not yet achieved major market success, and many of them have gone on to do so, and I will say some of them have become quite acclaimed indeed, after what was the first real recognition of their worth as a writer. Over the years, the contest has become truly international in scope. Annually, it draws between 700 and 1,000 entries from around the globe, and I mean literally around the globe. She sends me the lists. It's amazing. And Lorian evaluates all of them very, very carefully to determine the winners. And each year during this Hemingway Days event, we announce the first place winner and give the first public reading of the short story. Unfortunately, that's not what we're going to do tonight, and I do apologize, as does Lorian. She seriously injured her lower back and hip earlier this summer, and she's still in too much pain to give the stories the attention that she wants to give them. I mean, I guess she could just sort of randomly pick one, but that does not have anything to do with the integrity of the contest. So with great regret, she has postponed the judging and the announcement. The winners will be announced at the end of August, probably about the end of August, on the contest website, which is shortstorycompetition.com. and its Facebook page. And if any of you have entered, Lorianne sends her deepest apologies, and she truly appreciates your patience and understanding. So instead of reading the winning story, she asked me to read something else to you this evening. It's a piece about the Key West legend, a dear friend of hers who some of you might have known, Shine Forbes. Wow. It is my honor to present Fishing with Shine by Lorianne Hemingway. Off Key West's White Street Pier at night, the waters can glow green with phosphorescent algae, the odd, shimmering light rolling and cresting with the tide. These are seas warm as bathwater, prolific and filled with life, an undersea world of creatures whose collective heartbeat can be heard in the rhythm of the waters. It could be a world of wealth if you're hungry. Those who have fished here to survive have come to know each breed by the way they fight, and often by the patterns they make as they move through the water. And they have come to know, too, that any fish is edible if you're hungry enough. Fish flood in on the high tide through the channels that run beneath the bridges. You can see the deep mauve of the mutton snapper through the clear, pale turquoise of the rushing water, the sleek, steel shimmer torso of the barracuda, the deadly lionfish that can look like a harmless clump of seaweed. They're all moving in a dazzling water ballet. These are the pregnant waters that fed the town when it could not feed itself. From White Street Pier, the pastel water seems to flow from the bright horizon. And it is from this pier that I have come to watch the ominous darkening of the sky as hurricanes approach, to fish for barracuda in the fast pre-storm tide. And on an autumn day some years ago, when the seas were calm and the clouds unthreatening, to remember an old friend whose family had come to these shores nearly 200 years before. It was from this pier that Shine Forbes first fished when he was a boy on the island in the 1920s. It was a name that always suited him for the bright and open way he had. Shine was a second-generation Bahamian in Key West. His ancestors had come here on the flood of hope that had brought so many to the island in the early years. He had been a boxer in his youth, deft and quick with his jabs, his chin drawn down, eyes fixed on the shoulder muscles of his opponents. And throughout his life still staged show matches with the burly likes of writer Randy Wayne White, who took Shine on and lost when Shine was 80 years old. I was there. It happened. The damage done from years in the ring showed in the bright pink slash of a scar here and there on skin the color of black pearls. Journalists would come from all over the world to interview Shine Forbes. Once they found out that he had, in the 30s, boxed with Ernest Hemingway in outdoor rings set up in the backyard of a pool room in Key West's Bahama Village, where Shine had grown up. Bahama Village, then, was still much the same as it was when Shine was a boy. Banana pickers wandered the lanes, looking for ripe fruit that they pulled from the trees with crooked sticks. Children sold pale yellow key limes from bushel baskets. Candlelit statues of the Virgin glowed like mother of pearl when dusk fell upon this corner of Key West. Shine spent much of his life in a small clapboard house in Bahama Village. Its walls were decorated with pictures of his boxing glory years and of friends who had made a difference in his life. He was a man of quiet integrity and uncommon grace, who smiled openly but who could also assess a bad situation. It came from his years in the ring, he told me once, how you come to know a man's heart by his eyes. As Shine walked the sun-bleached sidewalks of Key West in his later years, you could hear people call out from all corners, "Hey, Shine, how's it going?" And Shine would answer back, "Can't complain, can't never complain." And he didn't. Not once in all the years I knew him did I hear him say that the world was not fair. You makes of life what you makes, he told me once. It's up to you. The journalists would always ask him the same question. What was it like to box the Hemingway? And he'd politely tell them the same story. How Mr. Ernest wasn't much of a boxer, but that he was a big man and a nice man. And that one Christmas he'd passed the hat for Shine and his buddies, Iron Baby and Black Pie, and that had been a good Christmas for them all. He told the story again and again with immense patience about how when Ernest was refereeing a match in back of the pool room, Shine had taken a swing at the writer because he didn't like Hemingway's call. Guess he respected that, Shine would say to the journalists who scribbled on their notepads and nodded enthusiastically at the story, but would never meet Shine's eyes long enough to see who he really was. Over the years, Shine's literal brush with greatness would be a thing he would shoulder well and with an often confused humility. Sometimes I just don't understand it, he would say, how just knowing Mr. Shine would make people want to know me. But the truth was, it wasn't really Shine they wanted to know. And the truth was also that they missed a chance to know the better man. Shine fished from White Street Pier for much of his life. And during the Depression years, what he took from the waters there was the greater part of his family's livelihood. Grunts and grits was what we had to eat, Shine would say, remembering those days. And we ate kuda too, sure, anything. We had some good suppers off of that pier, some good suppers. And we had some not so good. As I watched the water from White Street that day, I thought about what those Depression years had been for Shine. The cruise boats would come sometimes, bearing the rich who had remained untouched by economic disaster, and they would peer down from on high, watching the black boys along the docks who would clean the fish guts off the boards for a few pennies. Sometimes the people on the ships would come down, and it was then that Shine got to show what he could do. They'd throw change into the water, he said, and if it was some good change, say a quarter, why, we'd dive 40 feet for a quarter. I imagined Shine then, a young boy, lean and muscular, with lungs so powerful he could aim the arrow of his body 40 feet down through the water, the shiny quarter turning in the sea ahead of him, and then his quick fingers locking around it. The quarter that day would mean his family would have more than grunts for supper. It was what I was thinking of as the bright autumn day was beginning to wash away in streaks of pink and purple above the water, and of how, when I had asked Shine if he would fish with me the next time I came to Key West, he had laughed and said, "But I ain't hungry enough to fish." And I had thought then of how the sport I had pursued all my life, casting lines upon these waters because I needed to tangle with what lived beneath, must have seemed like just another privileged pastime to Shine, perhaps even a careless one, not unlike the sport of tossing quarters to hungry island boys. "But you know what?" Shine had said when I grew silent at his answer. "If it means that much to you, we'll fish, sure we'll fish. Off the old pier, we'll go out there with some good hand lines, some good hooks, some good bait, and we'll have ourselves a time." And we would have. Out at the end of the pier, we could have sat on a day like this, in the heat of hurricane season, with our lines playing in the water, though perhaps it would have meant one thing to me and another to Shine. For Shine, it might have meant a memory of days that were dark, even in a land flooded with light, but for me, it would have been the gift of the merging of two worlds, the uninitiated and the wise. And as was always the case with time spent with Shine, I would have come away the better for it. Shine Forbes died a few months before I finally made it back to White Street Pier. Friends said he had a stomachache that wouldn't go away. and that soon he could not sleep because of the pain. People came from all over the island to see Shine when he finally agreed to go to the hospital, and when he passed away on a warm, balmy Key West night, they took up a collection to pay for his funeral. I was to have met him here at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on the high tide. As I watched the light fade over the water, alone on the pier, I thought of the many times our paths had crossed in Key West, Shine's and mine, and that no matter how many years had passed, no matter that his memory was not as keen as it had once been, Shine would look at me with delight and say, "I know you. We's good friends, ain't we?" And I thought of how the honor was always mine to say, "Yes, we are." By Lorianne Hemingway. Well, I hope you have had a memorable time tonight. We honor our very talented presenters from the Key West Poetry Guild. And again, we thank the Gardens and the Key West Art and Historical Society for making this evening possible. Now, on Thursday, Hemingway Days has another unique event for people who